Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. Mom? Marvin? Anyone home? Elio called out, his deep voice echoing through the empty house. Silence greeted him. Perfect. Elio bounded up the stairs 2 at a time, making a beeline for his brother's room. He rapped his knuckles against the door in a familiar pattern. Marv, you in there? A muffled voice responded. Yeah, come in. Elio entered, his eyes adjusting to the dim light filtering through drawn curtains. Marvin sat hunched over his desk, surrounded by textbooks and papers. His slight frame seemed to shrink even further as he turned to face his brother. What's up? Marvin asked, pushing his glasses up his nose. Elio's face split into a wide grin. You're not going to believe what I've got. He held up the case triumphantly. Marvin's brow furrowed. What is that? This little bro is the answer to all your problems. Elio set the case on the bed and popped it open, revealing a sleek, form-fitting suit that shimmered with an otherworldly iridescence. Marvin stood, curiosity overcoming his usual reticence. What do you mean? Where did you get that? Elio's excitement was palpable. I, borrowed it from the lab at school. It's a prototype disguise suit, military tech, top secret stuff. You stole it? Marvin's eyes widened in alarm. Elio waved off his concern. Borrowed, Marv? I'll return it. Eventually. But this is too good an opportunity to pass up. Marvin inched closer, drawn despite his misgivings. What does it do? It can transform the wearer into anyone. And I mean anyone. Down to the DNA. Elio's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. It can even change your gender. The words hung in the air between them. Marvin's breath caught in his throat, his heart hammering against his ribcage. You mean... He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. Elio nodded, his expression softening. I know how much you've struggled, Marv. The teasing, feeling like you don't fit in your own skin. This could change everything for you. Marvin's hand trembled as he reached out to touch the suit. Is it safe? Totally. I've seen it in action. Elio conveniently omitted the fact that he'd only witnessed its use on lab rats. And it's permanent, no going back. Marvin's mind raced, a whirlwind of emotions and possibilities. I don't know, Elio. This is huge. Just try it on, Elio urged. See how it feels. If you don't like it, we can take it off right away. Marvin hesitated, his fingers tracing the suit's smooth surface. Years of feeling out of place, of wishing he could disappear or become someone else, culminated in this moment. With a deep breath, he nodded. Okay, I'll try it. Elio helped Marvin into the suit, which seemed to mold itself to his body as soon as it made contact. As the final piece clicked into place, a soft humming filled the air. How do you feel? Elio asked, watching his brother intently. Marvin opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat. A tingling sensation spread from his core to his extremities, intensifying with each passing second. He gasped, doubling over as the transformation began in earnest. Elio stepped back, awe and a hint of fear in his eyes as he witnessed the metamorphosis. Marvin's body shifted and reshaped itself, curves appearing where there were none before. His hair lengthened, cascading down his back in chestnut waves. His facial features softened, cheekbones becoming more pronounced, lips fuller. When the process finally stilled, a young woman stood where Marvin had been moments before. She blinked, disoriented, and raised a delicate hand to her face. Elio? Her voice was high and melodious, a far cry from Marvin's tenor. What happened? Elio let out a low whistle. Wow, Marv. Or should I say, Marva. You look amazing. Marva turned to the full-length mirror on the closet door, her movements jerky and uncertain. The reflection that greeted her was both foreign and achingly familiar. She saw echoes of her mother in the curve of her jaw, hints of Elio in the set of her eyes. But the rest was entirely new, a petite, feminine form draped in a suit that now seemed too large. I can't believe it, Marva whispered, running her hands over her new body. It really worked." Elio beamed, pride and a touch of envy coloring his features. "How does it feel?" Marva took a deep breath, savoring the way it filled her altered lungs. "It feels right, like I've finally found the missing piece of a puzzle I didn't know I was solving." A key turned in the front door downstairs, followed by their mother's voice calling out, "Boys, are you home?" Panic flashed across Marva's face. "Oh no, what do we do? Mom can't see me like this." Elio placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Relax. Mom's cool. She'll understand. Besides, we can't exactly hide this, can we?" Footsteps approached Marvin's room. Marva smoothed down her hair, heart pounding. How would their mother react? The door swung open, revealing their mother, Elena, her arms laden with grocery bags. She froze in the doorway, taking in the scene before her. Elio's guilty expression, the strange suitcase on the bed, and the unfamiliar young woman standing in her son's clothes. "Elio, what's going on? Who is this?" Elena's voice was calm, but her knuckles were white where she gripped the doorframe. Elio stepped forward, hands raised placatingly. "Mom, I can explain. It's Marvin." Elena's gaze snapped to Marva, who offered a weak smile. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. The grocery bags hit the floor with a thud. Elena's hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide with shock. "Marvin? But how? What happened?" Over the next hour, Elio and Marva recounted the events that led to the transformation. Elena listened in stunned silence, her expression cycling through disbelief, anger, and finally a cautious acceptance. "I always knew you were struggling, sweetheart," Elena said, reaching out to touch Marva's cheek. "But this is a lot to take in." Marva leaned into her mother's touch, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom. I know this must be a shock, but for the first time in my life, I feel whole." Elena pulled her daughter into a tight embrace. "Oh, my darling, all I've ever wanted is for you to be happy. If this is what you need, then we'll face it together." Elio watched the exchange, a mix of emotions playing across his face. He'd set out to help his brother, but the reality of the situation was sinking in. Marvin was gone, replaced by Marva. The dynamic of their family had irrevocably changed. "So what now?" he asked, breaking the moment. Elena straightened, her practical nature asserting itself. "Well, first things first. Marva needs some proper clothes, and we'll need to figure out how to explain this to the rest of the family, not to mention the school and our neighbors." Marva nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by the logistics of her new life. "I hadn't thought about all that." "One step at a time," Elena reassured her. "For now, let's see if we can find you something to wear that fits a bit better. Come on, I think I have some old things that might work." As Elena led Marva to the master bedroom, Elio was left alone with his thoughts. He glanced at the empty suitcase, a pang of guilt hitting him as he realized the full implications of what he'd done. He'd have to return the suit eventually, face the consequences of his theft. But for now, his focus was on helping Marva adjust to her new reality. In Elena's room, Marva stood awkwardly as her mother rummaged through the closet. "Here we go," Elena said, emerging with an armful of clothes. "These might be a bit dated, but they should fit you better than what you have on." Marva accepted the pile, her movements still uncertain in her new body. "Thanks, Mom. I'm not sure how to put some of these on." Elena's expression softened. "Of course, honey. I'll help you. It's going to take some getting used to, but we'll figure it out together." As Elena guided Marva through the intricacies of feminine attire, clasping bras, adjusting straps, and explaining the mysteries of pantyhose, a new bond formed between them. Marva soaked up her mother's knowledge, asking questions and marveling at the complexities of her new wardrobe. "Mom?" Marva asked as Elena helped her fasten a necklace. "Are you really okay with this? With me?" Elena paused, meeting her daughter's gaze in the mirror. "Sweetie, I won't pretend this isn't a shock, and I'm worried about the challenges you'll face. But you're my child, and I love you unconditionally. If this is who you truly are, then I'm here to support you every step of the way." Tears welled in Marva's eyes, and she turned to hug her mother tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "I love you, Mom." As the days passed, the Harris household settled into a new rhythm. Marva threw herself into learning the ins and outs of her new identity, with Elena as her patient teacher. They spent hours discussing fashion, makeup, and the unspoken rules of womanhood. Elio, for his part, found himself in uncharted territory. The brotherly bond he'd shared with Marvin was altered, neither better nor worse, but undeniably different. He watched as Marva blossomed, her confidence growing with each passing day. One evening, as the family sat around the dinner table, Elena broached a subject they'd been avoiding. "We need to start thinking about how to handle this situation publicly," she said, setting down her fork. "Marva can't stay cooped up in the house forever." Marva nodded, pushing her food around her plate. "I know, but how do we explain this? It's not exactly a common situation." Elio leaned back in his chair, brow furrowed in thought. "What if we say Marvin went to stay with relatives for a while? And Marva is, I don't know, a cousin who's come to live with us?" Elena considered this. "That could work for the neighbors and casual acquaintances. But what about school? Your friends?" Marva bit her lip, a habit she'd quickly developed. Maybe it's time for a fresh start. I could transfer to a new school, somewhere no one knows me." The suggestion hung in the air, heavy with implications. It would mean leaving behind everything familiar, but also the chance to truly embrace her new identity without the baggage of her past. "Are you sure that's what you want?" Elena asked gently. Marva nodded, a determined glint in her eye. "I think it is. It's scary, but I want to see who I can be without the shadow of who I was holding me back." Elio reached across the table, squeezing his sister's hand. "Whatever you decide, we've got your back, sis." The word sis sent a warm flutter through Marva's chest. It was another small affirmation of her new reality, one she cherished. As the family discussed the logistics of Marva's transition into society, a knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Elena rose to answer it, returning moments later with a worried expression. "Elio, there's someone here to see you. He says he's from the university." Elio's face paled. He'd known this moment would come eventually, but he'd hoped for more time. With a deep breath, he stood. "I'll handle this." As Elio disappeared into the living room, Marva turned to her mother, confusion and fear etched on her features. "Mom, what's going on?" Elena sighed, sinking back into her chair. "I think it's time we talked about exactly how Elio got that suit." In the living room, Elio faced a stern-looking man in a lab coat. Dr. Reeves, the head of the research project Elio had borrowed from. "Mr. Harris," Dr. Reeves began, his voice low and controlled, "I think you know why I'm here." Elio nodded, his usual bravado deserting him. "The suit. I can explain." Dr. Reeves held up a hand. "Save it. We know you took it. What I need to know is where it is now, and if it's been used." Elio swallowed hard, weighing his options. He could lie, try to buy more time, but the consequences of that could be dire. With a heavy heart, he made his decision. "It's been used," he admitted. "On my brother, or my sister now, I guess." Dr. Reeves' eyebrows shot up. "You used experimental technology on your own family. Do you have any idea of the potential risks?" Before Elio could respond, Marva appeared in the doorway, Elena close behind her. "It was my choice," she said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Elio told me the risks. I wanted this." Dr. Reeves turned, taking in Marva's appearance with a mixture of scientific curiosity and concern. "I see. And how long ago did this transformation occur?" "About a week," Marva replied. The scientist's brow furrowed. "A week, and the effects have persisted. That's unexpected. The longest duration we'd achieved in trials was 72 hours. Elio and Marva exchanged glances. "You mean it's not permanent?" Elio asked. Dr. Reeves shook his head. "It wasn't designed to be. The suit was intended for short-term infiltration missions."
but it seems the prolonged exposure has had some unforeseen effects.
Marva's hand flew to her throat, panic rising.
What does that mean? Am I going to change back?
I'm not sure, Dr. Reeves admitted.
We'll need to run some tests, but for now it appears the changes are stable. Miss Harris, I'm going to need you to come with me to the lab. We need to monitor your condition closely.
Elena stepped forward, protective instincts flaring.
Now wait just a minute. You can't just take my daughter.
Mom, Marva interrupted gently. It's okay. I need to know what's happening to me. And maybe they can help make sure I stay this way. Dr. Reeves nodded approvingly.
That's a mature decision. Mr. Harris, you'll need to come as well. There will be consequences for your actions, but your cooperation now will be taken into account.
As the family prepared to leave, packing overnight bags and making hurried phone calls to explain their absence, a mix of fear and hope permeated the air. Marva caught her reflection in the hallway mirror, wondering if it might be the last time she saw this version of herself. Elio approached her, regret etched on his face. Marva, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. She turned to him, a small smile on her lips.
I know. But Elio, don't apologize. Whatever happens now, you gave me a chance to be who I really am. Even if it's just for a little while. That's a gift I can never repay.
Elio pulled her into a fierce hug, his voice thick with emotion. You're my sister now, no matter what. We'll get through this together. As they pulled apart, Elena joined them, car keys in hand. Are we ready? Marva took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders.
As ready as I'll ever be.
The family filed out of the house, stepping into an uncertain future. But as they drove towards the university, following Dr. Reeves's car, there was a sense of unity that hadn't existed before. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a family, changed but stronger for it. The lights of the city blurred past as they drove, each lost in their own thoughts. Marva's hand unconsciously went to her chest, feeling the unfamiliar curves beneath her shirt. The possibility of losing this body, this identity she'd so quickly grown to love, filled her with a deep ache. Elio watched his sister from the corner of his eye, guilt gnawing at him. He'd set out to help, to give now Marva, a chance at happiness. But had he only set her up for more pain? Elena's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, her mind racing with all the potential outcomes. She'd adapted quickly to having a daughter instead of a son, but the thought of losing Marva now was almost unbearable. As they pulled into the university parking lot, Dr. Reeves was already waiting for them. His face was a mask of professional detachment, but there was a glimmer of curiosity in his eyes as he regarded Marva.
This way, please,
he said, leading them through a series of security checkpoints and into a sterile laboratory. Marva's heart raced as she took in the array of medical equipment and the team of scientists eyeing her with barely concealed fascination. She felt like a specimen under a microscope.
Miss Harris, if you could change into this gown, we'll begin with a full body scan,
Dr. Reeves instructed, handing her a folded hospital gown. As Marva disappeared behind a privacy screen, Elio turned to the scientist.
What exactly are you looking for?
Dr. Reeves sighed, removing his glasses to polish them.
To be frank, Mr. Harris, we're in uncharted territory here. The suit was never meant to be used for this duration. We need to assess the extent of the cellular changes, check for any potential instabilities or health risks.
Elena stepped forward, her voice tight with concern.
And if you find any problems, what then? Let's not get ahead of ourselves,
Dr. Reeves replied diplomatically. First, we gather data, then we can discuss potential courses of action. Marva emerged, looking small and vulnerable in the oversized gown. Elio gave her a reassuring smile, which she returned weakly. Over the next several hours, Marva underwent a battery of tests. Blood draws, MRI scans, genetic analysis. The scientists left no stone unturned in their examination of her transformed body. Through it all, Marva remained stoic, answering their questions with as much detail as she could. Yes, she'd noticed changes in her sense of smell. No, she hadn't experienced any pain or discomfort since the initial transformation. Yes, her emotional responses seemed different, more intense in some ways, more muted in others. As the night wore on, exhaustion set in. Elena and Elio dozed fitfully in uncomfortable waiting room chairs while Marva was subjected to yet another round of tests. Finally, as the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows, Dr. Reeves emerged from the lab. His expression was unreadable as he approached the family.
"We've completed our initial analysis," he began, his voice carefully neutral. "The results are unprecedented."
Marva sat up straighter, her heart pounding.
"What does that mean? Am I going to change back?"
Dr. Reeves shook his head slowly.
"No, Miss Harris. It appears that the prolonged exposure to the suit's technology has resulted in a complete and stable genetic transformation. For all intents and purposes, you are biologically female."
The words hung in the air, their impact rippling through the room. Marva's hand flew to her mouth, tears of relief and disbelief welling in her eyes. "You mean, this is permanent?" she whispered. Dr. Reeves nodded.
"As far as we can tell, yes. Your DNA has been completely rewritten. We've never seen anything like it."
Elio let out a whoop of joy, pulling Marva into a bear hug. Elena joined them, her own tears flowing freely. But Dr. Reeves wasn't finished.
"However,"
he continued, his tone sobering the family's celebration, "this does present some ethical and legal complications. The technology that created this change was not approved for human trials, let alone permanent use."
Elio's face fell. "What does that mean for Marva? For me?"
The scientist sighed heavily.
"That's above my pay grade, I'm afraid. There will need to be a full investigation, and likely some form of hearing to determine how to proceed."
Elena's protective instincts flared. "You can't possibly think of trying to reverse this now. It would destroy her." No, Dr. Reeves assured them quickly. "Even if we wanted to, we have no way of reversing such a complete transformation. Marva's new identity is, for better or worse, here to stay. The question now is how to handle the legal and ethical implications of what's been done." Marva took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "Whatever happens, I don't regret this. I finally feel like myself. If I have to fight to keep this life, then that's what I'll do." Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.